Good morning and welcome to Puggy's Corner. This morning I'll be talking with Lisa Comstock, a local author and writer. So first of all, I'd like to welcome you, Lisa, to Puggy's Corner.
Thank you, Puggy. It's good to be here.
Now, Lisa, a lot of people know you, they see you and walk around, but they really don't know you. So, at this time, we're having a conversation, you and I. Would you give a good little bio of yourself so they can really know who you are when they meet you on the street and talk to you?
Sure. My name is Lisa Comstock, formerly Lisa Witham. I grew up in Keene, New Hampshire. Actually was born here in Springfield, but I grew up over in Keene, New Hampshire for most of my life. Stayed there till I was 18, and then moved back here to Springfield, where I've lived since then, but I consider myself a Vermonter. Mm-hmm. Even though I did spend quite a few years in New Hampshire, I always felt Vermont was home, which is why I came back here as soon as I was an adult. Met my now husband at the time, dated for a couple years, and got married in '95. Been with him ever since. One of the few statistics that actually stay married more than 20 years. Yeah. And have a wonderful old 200-year-old farmhouse with no children, sadly, but 2 furry animals and lots of fish in the pond in my garden, which is my other passion, is gardening.
Now, did you go to college at all? Are you in college? What's your background educationally?
I do want to go back to college. I did do 2 years. I've got an associate's degree in accounting, and one of the few people that are actually doing something in what they went to school for. My day job is as technically accounts receivable invoicing for a company locally.
Sure. Well, that's great. So we can get started here. How did you ever become interested in writing?
From what my mother says, I've been interested in it basically since I was able to talk, telling stories when I was a kid. She said I told whoppers when I was a kid, not lies, but big stories. Even, she says, as early as like 2 years old, I'd keep the family entertained. And through school, different creative projects that we had to do for writing, I just jumped onto. I love reading. Read pretty much any book I could get my hands on as a kid. And it was one of those, I'd read a few books and it would like spark my imagination, and I'd find myself writing something either inspired by the book or something similar to that I would like to read. And then kind of over the course of things, sadly fell away from writing a little bit until just recently and got back into it. But it was something that I think somewhere in me there's always been a writing bone.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about when you were in grade school, when you and I talked. Now, what did you do, and was there any accolades or any awards or anything like that? Let's talk about the grade school to begin with.
Yes. I did, I don't know, I can't remember the actual names of the awards. I went looking for the clippings and couldn't find them, because I do still have a scrapbook with the various awards and the newspapers and stuff that they put me in from back as far as 2nd grade, but I couldn't find it. But yeah, I did, there was several different national writing contests that they had through grade school that I signed up for, and I wrote a story about Smurfs, which won me an award. I did a mystery novel for one of them that won me an award. Then it was kind of, there were, not much more than short stories basically.
But this is while you was in grade school?
Yes.
That's what we want to. Now I'm going to ask you, when did you start writing your first book?
The first book was about, would have been right after I got married. About '95 was when I wrote my first book, and it took me almost 20 years to finish. But over the course of the last 20 to 25 years or so, I've been writing pretty much nonstop. So I have technically 11 books published right now, and I still have 5 and a half that haven't been published that are waiting to be published.
Now, let's digress for just a second. When you were still in grade school, did you write a comic or something like that? Or?
Yeah. For a while, I stopped writing stories and actually drew a comic book, literally from start to finish, drawing the artwork and stuff, filling in the storyline, and actually made it into a comic book, stapled the corners and put a cover on it kind of thing. And I have somewhere in the neighborhood of 43 issues of the comic.
Well, could
Kind of a
you
graphic novel.
could you expand a little bit more on that? What kind of a theme was it, and how did it progress?
It was really my first dip into the science fiction world. It was called Starbirds, and it was based on a team of, some of them were kind of rogue characters, but based on a team of people that were pulled together to be like a rescue squad for space. And they'd go to different planets and rescue ships that had been trapped in space, clouds and stuff like that. So it was kind of a police rescue science fiction storyline kind of thing.
So when you had this comic book, about how many pages were it? We see the comic books on the and on a newsstand. They're about maybe 15 to 20 pages long, and that's it.
Yeah, about that.
And that's what yours were. Or?
Some of them were thinner. There were some that were only 15 or 20 pages. I have some that went into the 40 pages, and became like two-parters kind of thing. If I felt like it was getting too thick.
Okay, all right. Okay, now we'll come back up to this first book that you wrote. And you said it took almost 20 years.
Yes.
And why did it take that long?
I couldn't find the perfect ending for it. I had up until like the final chapter, which actually ended up adding 6 or 7 chapters before I was finished. But I couldn't quite get how I wanted it to end perfect. I didn't want it to just kind of bleh and be over with. I wanted to have it actually fit.
Okay.
So I put the book aside and wrote some of my other books for a while, and I'd come back to it every little while and add, 50 or 60 pages to it to get it closer, but still couldn't quite get the ending nailed. And then I finally, one morning, I just was sitting, I think I just woke up or something, just gotten out of bed, and it just kind of like, boom, literally a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
And I ran downstairs, and I didn't get all the details down, but I wrote enough of it down on a piece of paper so that when I could come back later and actually work on it, I could actually get it right. And like I said, it ended up being 5 or 6 chapters later, but it ended quite nicely, and I'm very pleased with how it ended.
Now, normally, does it take 20 years to write a book?
No. In some aspects, yes, because I don't know as I ever really consider a book finished, even though it's been published. But most of the books, for me, only took 6-7 months at best.
6 or 7 months?
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you come up with these titles that we have on these books here? How do you come up with those titles?
Some of them took, like the first one, Keeper of Secrets, that was something that had came about over the course of, it had changed several times before I finally settled on Keeper of Secrets. Some of them, Kept to the Shadows, the newest book that has just got released in December, I didn't have a title through most of its life, and I was reading it back to myself, and the term Kept to the Shadows is something that is mentioned throughout the book, because the characters are expected to be kept to the shadows and not be seen. So it kind of like obvious title, so it jumped out at me at the reading. The others were some of them were obvious right from the start. Back of Beyond was something that I knew that was going to be the title of it before I even wrote the book. And the Brimtier Chronicles, which is the science fiction series, Brimtier is actually a synonym for Space Frontier. Okay. And I wanted it to be, they're related to the journal that the pirate captain is doing, so they are his chronicles. And it just it sounded like a really nice title and flowed well off the tongue, so. And the characters in the book are Brimtier pirates, so it kind of lent itself well to being the title.
I should have asked this before, and I'm not trying to blindside you anyway, but what age group would you say your books are designed for?
Yes. The pirate stories, the Brimtier Chronicles, are geared towards 15 to 55, according to my publisher. I have had younger read them, and I have had older read them. I actually have quite a large range of people reading them, well into their 70s even. I do warn parents and grandparents that are buying them for under 15. There is some adult situations. Yep. They are pirates. Yep. I don't write graphic because I don't like to read graphic. No. It's not my cup of tea. But there is some situations where they have to be pirates. There is some violence. There is the occasional scene that you would expect in a
Yeah.
pirate story, but I don't go into detail on it.
No.
And there is the occasions where there's some gratuitous swearing,
Yeah.
but it's not on every page. There's chapters and chapters without swears in them.
Good.
And then when the characters are angry or in a situation where, you know, you're
Yeah.
gonna swear,
Yeah.
there is the occasional, but they're not, as long as the child is aware of the fact that there may be situations that they want to speak to the parents as they're reading it or have the parents close by. I don't think there's any age that couldn't read it. Obviously, I don't know as I'd want somebody 5 or 6 reading them, but.
No, but would you say from the middle school up?
Yeah, yeah. The others, the Keeper of Secrets, Kept to the Shadows, and Back of Beyond could be read by anyone. Those are pretty much, the Keeper of Secrets and Kept to the Shadows are considered young adult. So
Oh,
those
great.
are any age group. And Back of Beyond is an urban fiction, so it's more set in modern times. So there's not as much violence or anything like that in it. So those could be for any age group.
Any age. Now, speaking of graphics, who does your covers? Where all those scenes come from? Who does it?
Yeah. Most of them actually are either my own artwork or my own design ideas, and I've had somebody help with the actual graphics. The cover for the part 5 of my pirate novel was something that the publisher themselves came up with because I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to put that one together. I told them the elements of the book, and they created the cover for it, which actually works pretty well. But a lot of the artwork is either something that I've either photographed myself and made into a cover or was my own actual artwork. The cover of the first one, The Pirate Chronicles, is my actual artwork. Is a
So
design
you're
I
not
created.
only an author, but you're an artist. What you're telling me there, Lisa?
I'm a wannabe artist. I try.
Did you take art in school and all? Or?
I did, usual classes to get your degree for
Sure.
high school, and I had to take an art class for the degree for the college. So yeah, it's something that I wish I did better, and I would love to do more for in the future, take some more art classes, because it's something that I would love to do a true graphic novel at some point. I've had people tell me I should put the Brimtier Chronicles
Yeah.
into a graphic novel.
Wow.
Which is something that down the road I would certainly be interested in doing. I think it'd be fun to see them
Yes.
that way.
Yeah, would be. Now, I'm going to ask you another question at this time. You said you're married.
Yes.
How does your husband into this? Is he a writer too? Does he help you? Does he scrutinize your writing, or what's his role in this book writing here?
He's definitely my best editor and critic, which we all, even the best author needs a critic. You
Yes.
need somebody to be able to tell you honestly whether your books are good or need more here and there kind of thing. To begin with, he was standoffish because he's very creative with his hands with woodworking and metalwork and such, but he didn't really understand the concept or the idea or the need to write. So he was a little bit not unsupportive by any means. He certainly supported me, but he didn't really want to be involved to begin with. And over the course of things, he started to kind of get the bug a little bit too, and has started to really get interested in them himself, and has now read them all, and a few that haven't been published yet, and actually helps me with the editing process, and as I said, the critiquing them to let me know where needs more detail, this one's too detailed, that sort of thing. So now he's right there, almost acting as a manager of sorts.
You think he's getting the writing bug where he might start writing?
I would love it if he did, because I think he could do some wonderful stories if he really, really let himself go. But I don't think he's, and that's one of the things is until you're comfortable with it, you can't really write the way you want to. But I think once he started, he would get the bug too, and it would be hard to get him to stop.
Wow, that's great. I'll have to speak to him about that
Yes.
when I see him.
Yes.
Do you write every day? Do you sit down and write every day, or as you told me in your bio that you have a job? So do you still write every day, or what do you do?
I try to. I consider, even if I'm not actually writing it on paper, I'm doing it in my head. I'm keeping a storyline going in my head in the background pretty much all the time of whatever I happen to be writing at that time, and sometimes new stories that I haven't written down yet. But I do, sometimes an idea will come to me that I can't keep in my head, and I have a notebook that I carry with me pretty much all the time. And they'll find me at my break time scribbling away at my desk because I've got some idea that I have to get down right then and there over my lunch period. If I'm waiting at an appointment at the doctor's office or whatever, I'm constantly either writing or rereading something that I've already written to make sure that it's exactly how I want it to be.
Wow, that's... I don't know if I could do that.
And I don't know if I couldn't.
Now, I want to ask you a little bit, are you the only one in the family that's a writer?
No, actually, my sister has written 3 novels as well. She's got a fantasy series, the Outer Dominion Saga, that she has written and actually published through the same publisher that I went through. That's a 3-part series.
So basically the same kind of books that you're writing?
Similar to, yeah. She's a little bit deeper into the fantasy side of things than I really get into. Hers are I think you'd kind of consider more almost a dark fantasy, but they're young adult fantasy. She's goes deeper into the spiritual side than I do with their characters. She's got a series that she's working on right now called Angels and Deviants, which is based on the whole good versus evil, but there's also grays between side of things. So she's very much into that side. And my brother doesn't write, but he is an excellent artist. He got that side of the creative bug from my parents.
Does he ever help you with?
No, I wanted him to. When I was doing the designing for my ships, for the pirate series, I really would have loved him to have helped me with it. He's really good at drawing interiors of like spaceships and stuff. And I would love to at some point put like a 3D on my website so people could actually walk through the pirate ship. And I want him involved in that.
How's that look, you think?
I think it'd be pretty cool, and I think down the road a ways probably, but I do want to do it in the near future.
Does he live locally so he can come in and?
He lives over in New Hampshire. He lives over in Keene still.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's close enough, and we are in touch enough that it wouldn't be that hard to, even if we had to meet halfway between, to get together for meetings and such.
I'd like to see something like that.
That
That'd be
would be
interesting.
yeah.
Inside of a spaceship, yeah.
That would be really cool.
I know when you published your first book. It was 1995, right?
Actually, no. The first one was actually published in 2008.
2008?
Yeah. I started writing them in about 95, but I didn't actually get the first one published for quite a while, partly because I wasn't sure that I was ready to take the chance of being turned down, the negative, thank you but not for us letters that any author gets when you're first trying. Luckily, I only went to 3 different publishers before I found one that accepted them. So I didn't have to go through a lot of the pile of negatives that you get that tear your work apart in some cases. But once I started, I kind of now can't stop. But luckily, my publisher has told me keep sending them. So obviously, I've got quite a few out there now. But
who published your first book?
At the time, they were called Publish America, which is out of Fredericksburg, Maryland. They've since changed their name to America Star Books. But they're the ones that took me for the first 8 of the Pirate series and Keeper of Secrets. And then I ventured away from them and tried a different publisher for Back and Beyond. And sadly, it didn't work out with them, so I'm getting it republished with American Star Books.
So you're going to stay with them then?
Yes, yeah, they've been very good to me. They are very supportive. They allow me to use, as they call it, my unique voice in my writing. In fact, in the front of every single of the books that they publish, they have a blurb in there about the fact that this is written as the author requested with no changes.
Wow.
Because they don't, the way they put it with the first books, when they went to do the editing, because I don't write my captain grammatically. I write him the way he actually speaks, because I want you to get the flavor of who he is. And when they came to me for the editing for the first book, they said, if we do this, we're going to be taking most of your voice out of it. What do you want us to do? And I said, fix the grammatical errors, because those I do want fixed, spelling,
Yeah, for
punctuation,
sure,
that sort of thing. But if you can leave the rest of it as is, I would prefer it. And they have. They've been very good with that, and they've allowed me to design the covers myself and choose the artwork that I wanted. And they've allowed me to do various things inside the book that some publishers wouldn't be willing, certainly for a first-time author, wouldn't be willing to let the author do. So I feel very, and that's one of my big things is loyalty. I
Yes,
feel very loyal to them. And so for all I did venture away for that one book, it basically just reinforced with me that this is the publisher for me. So I went back.
Okay. So after the first book was published and put out there, how long did it take to sales started?
Well, actually, the first book, I actually had a list of people that wanted it before it even came out, because I'd had several people that had helped me with reading through it and so forth before that were the first ones on the list to get a copy. And they did pay for it, thankfully, because you do, a lot of sometimes family and friends think they're supposed to get them for free, which...
Yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah, I did give a few of them away to people for free, but for the most part, everyone's been understanding and willing to give me the money to buy them. So yeah, almost from the first day.
From the first day you say once it was out?
Yeah, and some of them I've had to, in some cases with Keeper Secrets, I actually had pre-orders before it even came out from people that had read the books and had basically told me they want anything that I write.
That's great.
Which is...
Well, I'm hoping through this show that we're doing here, we'll even give you more.
I would love that if it does happen.
That's what we want to do here. So how did you get the idea to say for the last one, the Keeper of the...
Kept to the Shadows?
Yeah, Kept to the Shadows.
Yeah. That was something that I'd kind of been working on for years in my head. As I said, I've got, even with the books that are already printed, I've got stories that are running around in my head that I haven't written yet. That was something that I kind of had running in the back of my head through most of writing the Pirates and stuff. It actually is one of the most recent books that I wrote. And it was kind of finally worked its way to the surface enough that I couldn't ignore it anymore. And it had to be written. And I started writing it, and it's based on, it's kind of a twist on the Prince and Pauper theme. It's based on the lives of 4 orphans who are being kept to the shadows, which is the name of the title. When they're out in public, they're supposed to stay hidden. And over the course of the book, they find out that there's more to their lives than they think there is. So it was something that some part of me needed to tell that story. I don't know, it's kind of an odd thing to say in some ways, and I know there's some people out there that will understand me.
Yes.
It's almost like it's something that I had lived before and I needed to tell.
That's it, yep. Yes.
And so that's the only way I can describe that particular experience. And that was something that I originally intended it to only be one book, but as I wrote, it became evident that it was going to be too fat a book if I made it just one, so it ended up being a two-parter. Second part, Cast Into the Light, is going to be released this spring. So it kind of...
Let me ask you a question. If you're sleeping at night and this great idea comes, what happens?
I wake up and grab the notebook beside me and write down bullets of what happened in it, which has happened
I was going to ask you, has it happened?
Yes, yeah. There's certain scenes in different books have come to me through dreams, but Back of Beyond actually was completely inspired by a dream. A lot of times when I'm dreaming, I'm not actually part of the dream. It's almost like I'm watching a movie that's playing in my head, which I realize there's probably people out there that take medicine for, but I don't want it. But it was something, I woke up and the story stuck with me so much that it's like, that's a book. And I instantly started writing down bullet points of the different things that had happened in my dream. And then over the course of that took me about, I think, 6 or 7 months to write, research included. Over the course of, I had to add a few scenes to it because they weren't in the dream, but they lent to the book, and it became a 350-page book.
You know, it's amazing to me. How do you know, like, if I when to end a chapter? If chapter 1, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
you kind of change gears and go into chapter 2.
It's kind of, it's weird in a lot of ways that it kind of seems to flow naturally for me in a lot of ways. Like I don't, sometimes I wonder myself how they do so. I'll read my own work 2 or 3 months from now and be like, wow, I wrote that.
Yeah.
It surprises me sometimes, and I don't mean that to sound like I'm being conceited or,
No,
or
no.
anything, but it surprises me sometimes that it was me that wrote these. It's like I'm 2 different people sometimes. And when I become the other person, it seems to just flow on its own sometimes. And some of it I have gotten from reading other books, of knowing, you know, you end a chapter with something exciting if possible.
Yeah.
Or, as you said, between scenes, when one scene ends, the next one begins. But some of the times I'll be writing along and I won't know just where I'm going to end the chapter, and just all of a sudden I'll come to a point that, okay, that's a good spot, and I'll stop there. Because I do have a tendency, when I'm talking too, to keep going and going and going. And so a lot of it is you do have to sort of train yourself to catch the stops.
Yeah. Now, where's your favorite spot around the house or outside the house that you like to sit down and write?
In my garden. I have a beautiful pond out there with a waterfall that goes through the summer with fish in it that play around and inspire me too. Someday I'm going to write a mermaid story. But yeah, sitting out there with the wind and the smell of the flowers around me and the sound of the water, it's peaceful. I don't have a phone near me. I'm far enough away that I can't hear most of the traffic. So it's a great place to close myself off from everything and just be part of my world. And it especially helps when I'm writing a scene with people outdoors.
Yeah.
If they're, you know, walking through a forest, if I'm sitting outside and smelling the smells around me that somebody might see or smell when they're walking around, it helps add to the book, I think, to the
Sure.
flavor of the book.
Now, while you're doing these books, do you ever have to do any research or, as you say, most of them are dreams that come out of your head like this here, but do you have to research some of these things
Yeah.
in dreams, or how do you do it, or where do you do it, the research?
Yeah. Luckily, when I'm writing fantasy novels, a lot of it can be purely imagination. Creating a monster or something can literally come from just, you know, what would scare me and create it. But some of the stuff, especially the Pirate series and the Back of Beyond, because there are a lot of science-related issues in them, I needed to do research for them. With the Pirate series, they're set in the 23rd century, so they're space pirates. So I needed to be able to understand aspects of living in space, how people would be able to survive on basically floating cities for months and weeks and years and so forth in a time, and how to have them be able to get from one planet to another and not have it take 10 years like it would seriously take. What kind of propulsion systems would be required, and to make it sound realistic as I'm writing it, because I don't want to say that they, you know, shot off the rocket and boom, they're at the other planet. I wanted it to be believable. They're not hard science fiction. They're not like Star Trek, where everything is literally technical down to the wire, where you could actually create what you're looking at. There is some fiction related, but I did want it a believable way to get from planet to planet. And I needed to make sure that this planet in this book is still in this spot when I write it the next time. So I kind of have to have a map of what my universe looks like, and I needed to make sure that, you know, if the sun is here, that the planet that's livable is far enough away from the sun to be actually a livable planet. So there's a lot of science that I had to look through for that, and science was not my best subject in school. I did okay at it, but
Yeah.
it wasn't my favorite. But
I'm surprised NASA hasn't called you.
I could maybe help them get to Mars.
So you alluded to earlier in our conversation here. Now, how many total books have you written right now that are published?
That have actually been published, 12, although Back of Beyond, as I said, is out of publication right now. So technically 11 that are truly on the market.
Okay, 11.
Yes.
And you have 5 on the horizon here.
Yes.
That you're almost there, but you're not there.
Yeah.
They're completed, but not completed.
Right.
Is that what you're saying? Or?
Well, 3 of them I think are considered completed at this point, and then the others I'm still working on. They're not quite to the point that I'd want them to be seen by the public yet.
Okay.
So yeah.
So how long does it take from the time you get your idea, when and where, to finish this book? And we talked about it earlier, but just so that the citizens can understand how
Yeah.
quick you can do a book.
Yeah.
I'm amazed, but would you tell them once again, how long does
Sure.
it take from the time you get your idea till you're ready to send it to the publisher?
As I said, for Back and Beyond, because I had most of the storyline already set from the dream, that only took me about 6-7 months to actually write the story, if I take the research part of things out of it, to actually put it on paper. And that was only because, as you said, I needed to make sure the chapters flowed well, that they ended at the right point, that I had enough pop and stuff in there to keep you glued to the
Glued,
pages. And then rewrites and edits and so forth. Yeah, about 6 months from start to finish on that one. And most of the pirate stories, once I got past number 1, because the storyline was already laid, the rest of them almost wrote themselves. I'd sit down and start typing, and I would get lost 2 or 3 hours at a time without realizing what I was doing, and put, 150, 200, 300 pages down without a break, because it was flowing that well in my head. And there are times that it kind of sputters a little bit and it takes me longer to get through a scene, because especially if it's a very emotional scene, but there's certain scenes, almost like in a movie, the action scenes write themselves faster than an emotional scene does. And it's almost like the pace of the book is keeping track with my writing speed.
As you're doing these, did you ever get distracted at all?
Yeah, sadly, the real world comes crashing in more often than I want it to.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of a scene and the phone rings.
Yeah. So
yeah.
how do you get back on track on something like that?
Sometimes it's easy if the flow is there and I'm really on point with the characters. It's easy sometimes, and sometimes it can take me a couple of weeks to get back in, because certainly with the pirates, I need to almost immerse myself in the world of the pirates as I'm writing. So if I do have things that if I know I only have a half hour of time to write, I won't touch them, because I know it's going to take me longer than that to get back into the story. So certain books, like the fantasy novels, I have an easier time to get back into and can write in shorter spurts.
Okay.
But yeah, the actual, if I can have a full day of writing from start to finish in a day without any distractions, there are times that I think I could almost pump out a whole book in almost a single day, if I had the time and the provisions beside me to eat and stuff to keep me going and not have any distractions. But it's hard nowadays with everything going on to find a day that I can actually close myself away. Yeah. I need a writer's retreat or something.
Yeah, I think you do too. So once again, what type of books do you write? Science fiction and...
Yeah, I started out in fantasy, actually, the fantasy side of things, young adult fantasy with witches and wizards and dragons and so forth. That was kind of my core, and seems to always be where I go back to. And I do have, as of right now, the two fantasy books that are out now. The science fiction kind of was a surprise to me. I didn't intend to write them. It was something that, once I started, I haven't been able to stop writing them, as you can see 8 books later. But it was something I never really figured, other than, I'd done the comic books when I was younger that were science fiction related, but I didn't ever figure I would write science fiction, because there's a lot of science to it. And as I said, that was not my best subject in school. And I knew that if I started that there would be a lot of research involved and a lot of ground laying for what the world was at the time that this is happening. It's not, if it was a pirate story on the open ocean, it'd be easier to write. Yeah. Because, the occasional sea monster. Yeah. But with the science fiction, it was one of those, I got the bug for it, and like I said, haven't been able to stop. But it's kind of, I think probably in the long run, I'll end up writing more on the fantasy side, because I don't think I'll ever do any more science fiction. I think the pirates are kind of going to be it for them.
Okay. Well, have you ever had an idea or a thought that might involve a local town or a town character?
There have been a few in town that have kind of sparked some ideas, and I, for all they shall remain nameless. There are a few characters in my books that have been derived from people that I know in town, or certain things that have happened in town that I've kind of incorporated. But I don't let people know that they're
In
this, or that they're meant to be part of this particular town. They're not written with that in mind, but there has been things that have either inspired or kind of lent themselves to characters.
Have you ever thought maybe you'd like to write about a character or something in a town? And
Yeah, I've thought about it. I mean, the idea that like Stephen King writes everything in Maine, and that's where he's from. It's kind of a neat concept, and I have had a couple of ideas sitting out at my garden, for instance, of, watching butterflies flitter by, that things will pop in my head that, I could have something happen where they start out in Springfield and end up somewhere else, and have them keep coming back to Springfield on occasion.
Sure.
So yeah, there've been ideas in my head of not necessarily writing current Springfield circumstances or things that are happening, but certainly having Springfield being like the base of where the book is.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah,
Well, let's ask another question. In all the books you have, do you do any book signings at all, or if you have, who have you been?
yes, I'd love to do more. I did a signing at the Borders in Keene and the Borders in West Lebanon just before they both closed, sadly, and had just barely gotten the books into what they call brick and mortar stores for the Borders across the country, which is not an easy thing to do for a first-time author.
No.
And somebody who really doesn't have the backing of like a big-time publisher. So I've also done a book signing that, sadly the place is closed now, but Black River Used Books that was here in town had me in for a signing, and they actually had my books on their counter for quite a while. And they helped me a lot with sales and getting the word out about my books. And I've done signings at some of the shows that I've gone to. I've done specific guest appearances at some of the shows I've gone to.
Where are the shows?
I haven't gotten any further south than Boston, and I haven't really gotten any further west than Pennsylvania. But I've done shows, mostly local, but shows up and down the East Coast, basically. I've done a couple in Massachusetts. Mostly, I tend to sort of slide into the gaming community pretty well, because the fantasy and science fiction lends itself to people that are doing games. In fact, I had somebody that asked me if I would ever make them into a role-playing game, which again is something that I would definitely be interested in having happen sometime in the future. So they're mostly gaming conventions. Intercon in Massachusetts. I did the New England Fan Experience in Boston. I've done anime in Boston. And then I have done Carnage Con here locally in Vermont I sadly wasn't able to make it this year due to circumstances, but I had been there the last 5 years and have been told there's a table waiting for me anytime I want to go to it. They are a gaming convention that last couple years have been up in Killington, Vermont, but before that they were at Lake Maury Resort in Fairleigh, Vermont. And again, they're a gaming convention, so they do everything from live role playing to board games and everything. And then I do craft fairs, is the other side of the selling that I do for shows. I do two of the local craft fairs, the Beyond the Unicorn and the Apple Festival. I've done both of them I've done the Apple Festival 6 years running and Beyond the Unicorn 5 years running. And they are great shows, especially right at the end of the year with Christmas right there for sales, because people love to, and it's one of the things that I encourage, definitely, give books for Christmas, because it's an adventure in your hand.
That's for the
basically.
children.
Yes.
As well as adults.
Yes.
Yes. So what is the general cost of your books?
If you buy them directly from me, they're less expensive because I don't have as much overhead as the publisher would have to use. So I sell them anywhere from $12 to $15 a piece.
Very fair.
And if you buy the set, I discount it down further so that you're ending up I think in most cases you're ending up only paying about $12 a piece for the Pirate series if you buy it as the full series.
Sure.
And to increase the loyalty of return customers, I tell everybody at the show, if you buy number 1 and like the series, when you come back, you will get discounted for the rest of them so that you end up paying the set price for the whole series.
Great. Yeah, that's
Because the return is what I need. I need people to want the next book in line.
sure. I don't blame you. So when you're at these shows and you're at the table and these youngsters come up and they ask you questions, you give them encouragement at all? Or what's
Yes.
your status
Yeah.
with the children?
Yeah, first thing out of my mouth is usually that we need more authors in this world. I very much encourage anyone that is even remotely interested in telling stories, even if it's just short stories, put together a grouping of short stories and make it a book. There's a lot of different books out there that are basically bunches of short stories. If they're interested in actually writing a true story, without being able to give up a lot of my time, I've had several of them ask, well, would you read it for me? It's like, yeah, I'll look it over for you. I'm not going to write it for you.
No.
But I will give you pointers of what areas need to be expanded from my own experience of being a writer, what the publishers are looking for when you do submit it, because there are specific guidelines that most all publishers adhere to. And certainly give them as many pointers as I can of what they need to know and expect to be a published author.
So you really encourage them, number one, and you kind of
Yes.
guide them and direct them.
I try.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's great because, if you want Stephen's King or something like that, you can't go to his house and say, I'd like to have you have a little input here.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So how many books have you sold to date, would you say?
Somewhere in the neighborhood of, I would think somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 of them between hand signings and bookstores and the different shows, my website, and the other websites that they're available on, Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Books A Million and so forth. It's not something that I can put a true number on because I only get my royalty checks twice a year.
Yeah,
So I don't find out sometimes what the actual book sales are until I get the statement for what sold for that particular month.
Sure.
But I would think that would be an accurate figure at this point.
That's great. Now, so how many places can a person find your books, and how can they, if they can't find them in the store, how can they get a hold of these books?
Yeah, pretty much any bookstore can order them because they all pretty much have access to there's 2 or 3 big warehouses that the bookstores get them from, and Publish America does provide them to those warehouses. So pretty much any bookstore can get them if you want them, and they're not on the shelf. But they are available, as I said previously, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. I believe Tower Books has them. There's other bookstores that are online that have them. My website, of course, directly from me.
And what is it? What is your website?
I have 2 actually. One for the Pirate series, which is brimtierchronicles.com. And that's BRIMTIER, because a lot of people spell that EI.
Yeah.
And that's specifically for the Pirate series, but there is a link to my other website, which is just lisajcomstock.com.
.com.
Yeah.
Okay, so they can get on the internet right off and type in your name and get a hold of you. Now, if they get a hold of you and they want the book, they just tell you, they give them the name and address, you get back to them right after you?
I try to. There is a link to an actual web store on there where they can purchase it from, which goes through PayPal. And I get a notice from PayPal telling me that a book has been purchased, and then I try to send it out the same day.
Okay.
Obviously, it depends on where I am at the time. If I'm at my day job, then it may not be till the next day, but I try and get it out quickly. And there is a comment field on there if you want the book signed specific way, that you can put in, because I will generically sign it no matter what. But
Right.
if somebody wants a specific note or to someone on there,
You will do it.
yes,
No extra charge?
no extra charge.
That's great. You know, some of them charge extra.
I know, yeah.
Yes.
No, I couldn't do that, because the fact that they're buying my book is bonus enough to me. I don't need the extra money. I'm not in this for the money. I'm in it because I can't not do it, and if I can give one other person enjoyment from having read my book, that's enough.
So that brings me to a question. What would your 3 goals, short-term goals be for the year?
For this year, obviously to increase book sales. I would love it if one of my books became a bestseller. And I guess the third would be if I could find a way to find more time to write. Because that's, the last couple of years has been a little bit harder on me than previous years. So if I could find more time to write,
Right.
would be the biggest, I think, of all the 3.
Now, if these books really start taking off and everything, and that's what I'm hoping this will happen for you, you'd probably quit your daytime job and...
I don't know, because I really like where I work.
Oh, okay.
I think to begin with, I would probably go down to part-time, certainly, but
Yeah.
Again, loyalty is a very big thing for me, and they've been very supportive of me, knowing that I'm an author and letting me leave work to do things like this and,
Sure.
and signings and so forth, talks and so forth. So I think I would have a hard time leaving them entirely for a little while,
Okay.
but I would certainly go down to part-time. I don't think I'd work any more than part-time if I got there. But yeah, eventually I would love to be able to do just the books.
That'd be great. And then have your husband, too, become an author, and that would be something, wouldn't it?
Yes, then
Travel
we could go,
together?
go cross-country
Yeah.
and do book signings together, get my sister along, and the 3
Yes.
of us could set up together.
We got to get your sister up here so I can talk to her.
Yes.
So that we can have the same conversation. Maybe
Yes.
have you with her, so we have both talking. That'd be
That
great.
would be wonderful.
Be a good show for me. I'll do it. Okay.
I'm trying. I told her last night in an email that she needs to get up here at least for a visit, if not for longer, but certainly for a visit. And
What was the reply?
she hasn't responded back yet, because I sent it late last night, so there may
okay.
actually be a response sitting there now. She's more of a nighttime person, so
Okay.
she's not up as early as I am.
Okay. Now, in all your writings, have you ever considered maybe doing a religious series at all?
I have actually. I'm a member of the Calvary Baptist Church here in town, and I'll sit there through the sermons sometimes, and there'll be sparks in there that, oh, I could do something with that. And obviously, I'd probably make it a little bit more on the fantasy side of things as opposed to real religious. But there is certainly some aspects of it that I want to work into stories. And there have been times where I've thought about writing something, not necessarily, I guess sort of my beliefs of the world and of God and so forth, how I see him and how he's affected me and how I think that he should affect the world. So yeah, there have been times that it has kind of tickled the back of my mind.
Good. I hope it tickles it real good. Now that we've talked. Now, if there's any 1 or 2 persons in this world that really inspired you to be a writer, who would it be?
My parents, yeah. Sadly, my father passed away just before the first book got published in 2008. But he was very instrumental in encouraging me to write. He was a very creative person himself and actually thought about being an author, but he never really pursued it. So when he found out that I was interested, he really pushed for it. And my mom has done anything. She luckily is still with me. She does everything she can to help me. She, a lot of times, pushes my books for me harder than I do at the shows, because she goes to a lot of the shows with me. And she'll actually go out and grab somebody and bring them to my booth
That's
for
good.
me. But yeah, the last couple years of my dad's life, he was not really bedridden, but couldn't get around as much as he would like to. And one of my fondest memories is reading the books to him.
Oh,
The
great.
first of the Pirates, he only got through number 4 before they hadn't been published at that time. I was just reading to him from computer. But I'd read to him the first 4 before he passed away, and which is why the first 3 are actually dedicated to him, because I feel like he helped me in getting them published from up there.
Right.
I don't think I would have had the courage to do it if he hadn't enjoyed the stories so much.
Now, you said he was kind of a writer himself. Did he ever keep like a journal or something that notes that you could kind of get some of that out of there?
Yeah, actually he did. He kept diaries that I've been reading through the last couple years as I am able to, because sometimes the emotions kind of build up and get me, but he did a lot with that. He did some editorials for the local newspaper whenever he could. So yeah, he did a lot of. He even kept a journal of what the weather was every single day of his life, pretty much. So I could tell you 10 years ago what the temperature was and what the weather was like outdoors and what the local headlines were.
You know, you mentioned something to me earlier, and I almost forgot, but I think that people out here really want to know. You have the audio versions of some of these books already.
Yes, yes.
Right? Which ones do you have that are audio that people could hear as they're driving down the road, could play it?
Yes.
Which ones are they now?
The first 3 in the Brimtier Chronicles series are in audio, and I'm in the process of getting the 4th one completed. They are in my voice, and they are abridged, because to actually do it from start to finish, you're talking 10 discs.
Yeah.
The first one is 7 discs, but they are in MP3 format, so you can play them in your car stereo or convert them to your computer and listen to them through your iPad or whatever. And I pretty much have them at any of my shows when I go to them, and they are also available on my website. That's the only place you can get them from, is directly from me.
So what's the cost of those?
Those I'm doing at $12 a piece, or $30 for the set of 3, for the first 3.
Good. But I think the people out there should know that, because a lot of people, say,
Yes.
I can't just sit down, I don't have the time right now, but as I'm riding or driving, I can hear the whole story,
Yes.
I think that's great that you're doing it in audio, and especially locally here. I don't know of another local author that has that. So
And they have sold very well. I've got several people that have come back to every single show to buy the next one in line, because they're truck drivers and they want something to listen to. They are the first 7 of the Pirate series, and Keeper of Secrets are also on ebooks on Nook and Kindle.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's what the people have to know out here. Here we have citizens, a local author right here, that she has written 12 books, 11 of them are here, as you see, and not only that, they've gone audio. Now, what more do you want? I mean, if you want something to listen to instead of some of the things we hear on the radio now, buy the audio and listen to this whole book. She's narrated on the tape so that you can hear it. So let's get out there and get those. And I'm surprised to hear that you have already gone audio. I think that's great. Now, I want to ask you another question, Lisa. Have you visited any of our local schools? I'll say from, even down to the elementary schools, because that's where you started.
Yes.
Have you had a chance to go in and talk to them at all?
Not locally, no. I have been to, I did a report for one of my friends in a class that she had down in Bellows Falls High School, but I haven't sadly had the chance to do one really truly locally, and I would love to.
I was just going to ask you, now if we, obviously the citizens out there are hearing this, but they're going to be getting a hold of the school board, and not only that, the principals of different schools. I think it would be a tremendous asset to them to have you come in and just talk about how you write books and how the thoughts and the themes and all this comes to fruition through your writing. And I think it'd be a tremendous thing that you could visit every one of our schools, because you're a resident of Springfield and an author and well-known now, and I don't see why the schools don't have you come in. And I'm going to make sure they know that you're available.
I am definitely available.
You'll make yourself available, and we'll get you in there, because I think it's great, especially on the high school level before these kids leave.
Yeah.
If there's any inspiration as far as they're concerned about writing, you're there, you can show them and talk to them. And that's what I want to get out there. So we're going to see if we can get you in there, okay? Now, if somebody in town would like to have you come from some civic organization, I don't care if it's from the Garden Club to the Lions Club, the Rotary Club, or the Moose Club, Elks Club, if they'd like to have you come and speak and talk about your writings and your books, would you do that?
Yes, I would definitely. I have actually given a talk for the Rotary Club once up at the Hartness House, and I very much enjoyed it, and I think they enjoyed it very much.
Great.
From what I got for comments after. But yeah, I'm definitely interested, whether it be talking about the books or the writing process or where ideas come from, whatever aspect or side of the being an author they want to come from. I'm more than willing. This, as I said, we need more authors in this world, so I'm willing to do a creative writing course for somebody if they want me to, and actually have the kids run through a simulated story or something. There's, again, lots of ideas there that you could run with.
Citizens, you've heard, Lisa, just what she was saying. So now I urge you citizens to go out there and if you belong to an organization, have Lisa come and talk about it. But if you have a child in school, go to that school and say, look, I was watching Puggy's Corner and J Comstock was on there, and she's a writer, a local author. And we'd like to have her come in and talk to the students so that they can be inspired and maybe they can be the next J Comstock in writing here in Springfield. But I urge you to, get out there and have her involved so that, especially in our local schools, so that we can have some more writers and authors coming out of there.
Yes.
So I urge you all to get out there and make sure that in any school that your child is in, Lisa goes and talks to them. Now, you said that you've had book signings, but have you had a chance to go over to Mr. Valley and sign books there?
No, I have not had that opportunity yet, but I am very willing and will find the time to get over there if they were willing to have me.
Well, I don't understand why Misty Books haven't asked you to come over, especially being a local author, and not only that, having more than one book that's been published. So I would urge Misty Valley at this time to contact you and have you come out there, because I think that they're missing the boat not having a local author like yourself over there for a book signing. And so if you people from Chester are watching, and I know you watch my show, you call me, go down to Misty Books and say, hey, I'd like to see J Comstock over here so I can talk to her, but also buy a book from her. So Misty Valley, you're on record, you're on note that we want Lisa over there for a book signing. So if we can find another one, we'll do that too, Lisa.
Yes,
okay?
yes.
Now, you've had the 10 books, and you said about the 5 books that you have yet to get to the publishers.
Yes.
What are they going to be about? Can you give us a little hint of what
Yes.
this is all about?
One of them is a 3-part trilogy, or I guess I need to say 3-part trilogy. A trilogy that is what they call an epic fantasy or a quest fantasy, where they actually have a set goal in mind that they're trying to get to, which is a true fantasy, what they call high fantasy, with wizards and dragons and so forth. That is a series that over the course of, I've probably rewritten it 4 or 5 times over the course of the years to get it just right. And it's one that I'm hoping in the near future to get out there, but I want to make sure that I get the others out first, because when I get those out, I want to be able to focus on them and really promote them, because I feel like they are almost movie class books. Ooh. So I want to make sure that they are truly perfect when they get out there. And yes, I would love to eventually have my books become movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I have another standalone young adult fantasy novel that I've probably going to be the next one I do after the second half of Kept to the Shadows comes out. That is kind of a little bit religious in aspect in some ways. There's a society that's been kept secret because of their religious beliefs and are now having to request help because of something that happens to this particular society that I'm hoping to do next. And then I've got, as I said, the ones that are almost partially finished. I'm working on part 9 of The Pirates. They have people that are already chomping at the bit for that. That have told me that I need to get going on it. And then I've got a 4th to the high fantasy series that I want to work on that's a prequel to one of the characters' backstories.
Okay. Now, quickly, can you give us a quick synopsis of these books up through here? And
yes.
Just mention the name of the book and then a little synopsis up through.
Okay. The Brimtier Chronicles is, as I said earlier, Brimtier is a synonym for space frontier, brim meaning space and tier short for frontier, which is technically the final frontier as far as in a lot of ways. They're based in the 23rd century, so it's obviously in our distant future. They are based on our actual Earth has become overpopulated and has had to reach out to the stars, which is sadly not so far-fetched. And we've had to colonize space. And in the books, there's 3 different tiers, which is where the tier comes in. The first tier is Earth and our closest planets, and they're the affluent, the rich, the powerful. The second tier, the inner tier, is middle class, better educated, more money, but not, really truly the powerhouse of things. And then the final tier, the third tier, is basically the poor, the criminals that got dumped on planets out there and are being left to fend for themselves. The pirate captain is a Robin Hood style pirate where he is stealing from the rich like pirates do, but he's giving some of what he steals to those colonists in the third tier to keep them alive, which is where the Robin Hood aspect comes in. The storyline is basically based on him and his crew and how they deal with essentially being heroes and criminals at the same time, how they sleep at night knowing some of the things that they've had to do to survive and keep their colonists alive. And in some ways, they have found themselves in some situations actually having to help who they consider the bad guys, the government, to do things that they're not willing to necessarily do on their own. So it's the thin line between hero and criminal that they have to walk and how they deal with it. And you do see more of the pirate side of things than the government side of things, but there is some situations where some of the government people switch sides because they realize that for all he's a pirate, he's right. So there's a lot of moral issues involved in the story. And as I said, they are kind of geared more towards the adult side of things with the themes and so forth, but they're a very widespread story. So there's a little bit of something for everyone. There's action, adventure, a little bit of romance, government intrigue. So there are some mystery aspects. There's pretty much any kind of books that you like reading are kind of included in those stories in some aspect.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you gave us a good little quick synopsis on that. But let me ask you a question now that you had this. If somebody should come to you and give you some kind of a phrase or a name or a title, could you probably write a book about it? Or?
Yeah, I think I could, depending on obviously what the parameters were as far as how creative I can be with the title. I think I could probably write something on pretty much any phrase. I actually, when I was taking my courses for college, one of the electives was a creative writing course. And that was something that we had to do in the creative writing courses. They gave us a single line and we had to write a story from it. And I actually took this course online. And some of the things that people would respond to when they read my stories, I wondered where you were going to go with that, because they knew that I was going to I would usually write something completely different than anyone else was heading for. But I thought it was a great mental exercise to do something like that, just from a single word prompt or a sentence, or like you said, a title. If somebody came to me and said, what would you write for Back of Beyond? I could probably come up with easily 10 or 15 things off the top of my head, just sitting here, that I could write for it.
That's great. Well, I took creative writing when I was in college, and I had it nationally published myself.
Nice.
But mine was all fire-oriented.
Yes.
And mine was called From a Dream to Reality, where I built a complete training grounds.
Oh, nice.
So I did it, but not as good as you, I can tell you. Now, Lisa, we've covered a lot of ground this morning, and we've covered a lot of areas in the different books, and especially you. We get to know you better now. We know how you come about to really come up with the titles and the writings and everything, and it's really been eye-opening for me, and I know it is for the citizens. But is there anything that you'd like to say or add that we haven't already covered?
Basically, my main thing that I would say to anybody, and I tell a lot of parents when they're at my shows, encourage your kids to read and write if they're interested in writing. Encourage them to do anything they want creatively. If I hadn't had the encouragement, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. And it's something that every child should have someone in their life that tells them, dream,
Right.
dream big. I'm living proof it can happen.
That's right.
Dream big. Don't even remotely box yourself in. Go outside the lines.
Right.
Don't be afraid to color outside the lines. And I do still color in coloring books. And I
good.
do enjoy it.
Yeah.
Anything that a kid can do creatively, parents, aunts, uncles, even their brothers and sisters should encourage it.
Okay.
That's my main thing, and one of my life goals is to have more kids out there doing anything creative, but especially more authors.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Lisa, for taking the time to come in on Puggy's Corner, but also in enlightening citizens that what a charm and what a jewel we have here in town. So I want to say to you citizens out there, now that you've heard the author herself speak to you and about the book she's written, now's the time to come out and buy the books, whether it's for your children or for your spouse, but let's support this author so that she can attain what she wants to, and one of her goals is to have a #1 seller, and we can do it if we support her. So I'm asking all of you citizens out there from all over, from Chester to Bellows Falls to Charlestown and Windsor, and all of you, Ludlow, that are hearing this, go down to your bookstore. If they don't have a book that's written by Lisa Comstock, ask them to get it, and so that she can have her books out there, and you'll be able to share what she has in her writing, share her writing, the writing she's done, and you'll enjoy the writing, and then you can pass it on to somebody else. So once again, folks, get out there, buy these books, and if you see Lisa, tell her how you think of her and what you think of her books, so that it'll encourage you to keep going. And I want to thank you for watching Puggy's Corner.
Thank you.